Hello, ladies. I'm looking for someone who enjoys quiet evenings reading at home, long romantic walks on the beach, and preferably someone who's drift compatible so we can pilot Jaegers and save the world from terrifying monsters. If this sounds like you, call me. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Thumb Together, and today we are going to be talking about Pacific Rim Uprising together. My name is Andrew Fantasia, and as always, if you like this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well so I can keep making more videos and more robots. Robots are hard to build. You know why my robots never got off the ground? Because they were made out of cardboard. That's just what happens. Thankfully, the citizens of the world in Pacific Rim are much better at building robots than I am, so much so that we got not one, but two Pacific Rim films, and the sequel is out. It's finally here. I feel like it's been a long wait. It's been almost 5 years now. I thought the first one was a lot more fun than people gave it credit for. Yeah, it was just a gigantic, popcorn 90s movie. It was a 90s blockbuster made in 2013. But I liked it. I had a lot of fun. I was looking forward to a part 2, and now that it's here, I would say it's neither better nor worse than the first one. It is pretty much par for the course. It's more of the same, more of the stuff we love, more of some of the stuff we didn't love, and altogether just another fun popcorn movie. If you've never seen a Pacific Rim, one thing that I think you should know before you go into it is that both of these movies are covered with a very thick layer of cheese. I'm talking like gooey mozzarella cheese. If you don't like cheesy movies, stay away. Spend your time on other affairs because cheese is what you're getting. But if you're okay with that, if you're, if you like your movies like you like your pizza with lots of fun toppings and a little bit of cheese on the bottom, then I think you're going to be very surprised and very happy with Pacific Rim. What is this sequel all about? If you saw the last one, you know that there were all these monsters coming up out of a portal, essentially, in the Pacific Rim. And at the end of the film, our heroes closed up the portal, sealed the gap between our world and their world, and kept the monsters from coming back. So this picks up 10 years later. It has now been 10 years. The war has ended. It ended with the first film, and now everybody's happy, and the world is a kind of a complacent place again. It's a very different world than what we know because it has dealt with the likes of the kaiju and the Jaegers. So now the Jaegers are sort of a ceremonial defense force. They're still around, but they just kind of walk around during parades, and they'll patrol the cities for crime, but they'll just be like, hey, you, stop graffitiing that wall. I'm a big robot. They're there just for show now more than anything else. We are thrust into a world where the humans were victorious and they're just sort of resting on their robotic laurels. You might have been wondering, going into this, how would they do a sequel when they very clearly established in the last one that the rift between worlds was closed? The breach is what they call it. The breach was closed. I'm actually very pleased with this. This is one of my favorite parts of this movie is that, I'm thinking the same thing we're all thinking is, how the hell are kaiju going to come back? Like, how are they going to explain this without it being stupid? And they actually did it in a very logical, clever way that follows a thread that happened from the first movie. And they didn't just throw the kaiju back into the mix and be like, oh, the monsters are back, everybody run. That would have been the easy way out. But they made you earn the kaiju in this movie. We don't see a kaiju until, I want to say, at least an hour into it. And it's a shorter movie than the last one. This is under 2 hours. But we really wait a long time before we see some kaiju action. But that is a good thing. They really build up the suspense of, like, are these things coming back? They fake you out a few times thinking you're going to get a kaiju, but it's not. It's something else. And I thought it was really clever, and it was a very smart way to introduce these monsters again and give us a logical reason why we're seeing them again. So the plot involves Jake, who is the son of Stacker Pentecost. He was Idris Elba from the last movie, and Jake is played by John Boyega, and he's awesome. You can't not love John Boyega. I mean, every movie he's in, you just want to be friends with him. And it's no exception here. He's sort of this slacker kind of guy. He makes his living by going around and junking old Jaegers and stealing tech from them that's worth a lot of money and that's selling it on the black market. And he has made himself quite a nice living because of that. And he used to be a Jaeger pilot. He used to go to the academy because his dad was all about that. But then he sort of swore it off and the war ended, and now he's just living large out in the world. He bumps into a new character played by, I hope I'm saying her name right, Kaylee Spaney, and she's sort of this street tough kid who is really good at putting together Jaegers, and she actually made her own Jaeger. And it's very small. It's maybe about the size of a house, so it's tiny compared to other Jaegers, but she did it herself with scrap. So she's good like that, and she meets up with John Boyega, and they kind of get themselves into trouble, and they get thrown in prison. And who visits John in prison but his adopted sister, Mako Mori, who we remember from the first movie. She was Stacker Pentecost's adopted daughter. So now we see, he had this blood son, but he had this adopted daughter too, and they grew up as siblings, and, they were close once. And she's a high-ranking member of the military now, and she says, come back to the Jaeger program, otherwise you're going to go to jail. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that. He goes back to the program. He's reunited with his old pal, who's played by Scott Eastwood. And Scott Eastwood is your typical, he's like every other protagonist from Pacific Rim 1. He's just a really dashing, good-looking, blonde, muscular guy. And he was sort of frenemies with John Boyega back in the day, and they would pilot Jaegers together. The relationship that they have in this, it's kind of like Scott Eastwood is Cyclops and John Boyega is Wolverine. They have that whole thing where Scott Eastwood is just this stick in the mud who's like, I'm going to follow the rules and you better do what I say. And John Boyega's like, geez, will you take a pill already and just let me eat my ice cream in peace? I really like that. I really like their relationship. And of course, over the course of the movie, they put their differences aside because bigger problems are happening. Then, of course, we've got Charlie Day and Bern Gorman, who are also reprising their roles from the first movie as the two scientists. They're back full force. It's like we never left them. They're pretty much exactly the same. Oh, Bern is anyway. Bern Gorman is the same kind of character. Charlie Day, however, his character Newt is now working for Shao Industries, which is, I think, the leading technological developer in China at the moment. And he works for a character named Li Wen Xiao, who's played by Jing Tian. And she's this really cold corporate lady who's the CEO of this giant company. And she wants to make drones. That's right. She's looking forward to a future where we don't need Jaeger pilots. She wants to build Jaegers that are operated entirely remotely. Jaeger drones, that's her end game. And Charlie Day's character, Newt, is sort of the Smithers to her Mr. Burns. And he's this rich, powerful guy now because he's got this really cushy executive job. And he's sort of helping her do that. So that's our main cast of the movie. And that's sort of where the world is at this point. Is, Jaegers are still being built for security reasons. But kaiju have not been seen for 10 years. Then we get to the plot of the movie because obviously this movie needs a plot. How do we have a movie called Pacific Rim with no kaiju in it? Well, obviously we know we're getting kaiju, but how and why? These are the mysteries of life, and this movie will answer them for you. Before I go into spoilers, I'll just sort of summarize. We get, like I said, a great reasoning for the kaiju coming back and a great sort of build-up to it. Once the revelations are made and once the monsters are back out into the world, then it becomes, classic Pacific Rim, where all the Jaeger pilots suit up and they get into their Jaegers and they go and they clash and they fight the kaiju, and it's this great big fight and it's lots of fun. We get a lot of new Jaegers in this. We don't even have any of the original Jaegers. Gypsy Danger has of course been destroyed, so now we have sort of the sequel Jaeger to that. His name is Gypsy Avenger, and he looks the same, just a little bit tricked out. And they actually did a really good job with giving all the Jaegers unique weapons and attacks. We had a little bit of that in the first one, especially with the China Jaeger. They had the 3-armed Jaeger, and that was cool. You have this whole different set of attacks that it could use. And in this one, they sort of amped that up. You've got more weapons that they're built with. They have a lot of special moves, and that was cool to see. It wasn't just identical robots. It was every robot had a personality to it, which was great. Visually, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is leagues ahead of what we got in the first Pacific Rim. It's just visual. There's just so much more visual candy in all the scenes that take place sort of on ground level, just all the humans and their bases and whatnot. It's still pretty much the same. You've got a lot of, hologram lights, all different assortments of colors like the first one. So that still looks the same. But in terms of the big battles, you've probably noticed in the trailers that it is literally a night and day scenario. The first Pacific Rim, every scene, with the exception of like a 20-second scene like in the prologue, every scene took place at night in the rain. All of them. That was just how the first one was. And now seeing Uprising, it's the complete opposite. It's all taking place in broad daylight, clear, vivid blue skies. Everything is just right there in front of you, crystal clear, and it looks amazing. The final battle takes place in Tokyo, which was awesome because, that's where kaiju lore was born. Back in the 50s, we all saw Godzilla stomp his way through Tokyo, and that's how it all started, baby. So it's kind of come full circle. It just looks so pleasing. And the first one didn't look bad, but it was just dark and shadowy, and it was a very different animal, whereas this one is just, here they are, it's all out in the open. That's why I'm wearing this bright blue shirt, because this is how Pacific Rim Uprising feels. Just bright and vivid, and just sweet to look at. It is eye candy in every sense of the word. So I think Stephen S. DeKnight, who directed this, did a really good job. He picked up the baton from Guillermo del Toro and he ran with it, but he ran with it in a different direction and made it his own. And the style and everything is beautiful. It's just brighter and more pleasing to look at. And I want to say funnier. It was a less dark movie in every sense of the word. So let's go into spoilers now, because there's a big spoiler in this movie. If you haven't heard about it already, which sort of is the reason why we have kaiju again. And that's kind of a big deal. Let's lay the cards on the table here. The kaiju were supposed to be gone. We knew that there were overlords in the kaiju dimension that were sending their monsters to go terraform Earth. And then, of course, the breach was destroyed by Stacker Pentecost and Raleigh Beckett and Mako Mori, and everybody was saved, and all was well until now. So what happens now? Well, there's a scene early on in the movie, I want to say maybe not quite at the halfway point, before the halfway point of the movie, where there's a parade. And during this parade, the character of Miss Shao, who runs the Shao Industries, is going to put forth her sort of speech as to why she thinks we should have drone Jaegers. And on the flip side of that coin, Mako Mori from the first movie is going to be presenting her speech why she thinks we should not have drone Jaegers. Mako Mori is taking a helicopter to this big event, and everything looks fine and dandy, and when all of a sudden, something comes up out of the water. We're led to believe for a minute, oh my god, here comes a kaiju, this is going to be crazy. But then out of the water comes a Jaeger that we've never seen before, a gray Jaeger. We don't know its name. It just comes up out of the water, and it starts attacking people. It starts to terrorize the city. And of course, John Boyega and Scott Eastwood are in Gypsy Avengers, so they go to fight it. And then this Jaeger takes down the helicopter that Mako Mori is in, and the helicopter crashes, and Mako Mori dies. And John Boyega is upset because that's his half-sister. But at the same time, we, the audience, the gears in our head are turning, are like, okay, she was going to speak out against Shao Industries and their drone plan. And you look over at Miss Shao, and she's all like calm and collected, and she's this icy businesswoman, and she doesn't smile, and she doesn't even like shaking hands with people. She's a big meanie. And we're like, oh, okay. Something tells me that Jaeger has something to do with this lady right here. But then there's a twist on this. Scott Eastwood and John Boyega find the rogue Jaeger. I think it's hiding out in the Arctic somewhere. And they find it, and they have another really cool fight. The Jaeger on Jaeger fight is awesome. They have this great fight, and then they end up beating the rogue Jaeger, and they rip it open to find out who's piloting it. And all they find inside is a kaiju brain. And the kaiju brain is attached to like the core of the Jaeger, and it's got tendrils going all throughout the Jaeger, and it's controlling it. That's a bunch of red flags now. They're like, oh my god, who put this here? Later that night, Miss Shao is launching her drones. They're going to be launched, and they're in effect. It's done. It's ready to rock and roll. So the drones launch out. There are these identical white Jaegers. They're kind of like stormtrooper Jaegers. They don't really have a personality to them. They're just these sleek white Jaegers. As soon as they're launched, something in them like transforms, and they become like monstrous, like kaiju monstrous, and they start terrorizing and killing every human they come across. And then there's just pandemonium, and it's like, oh my god, what is Shao Industries doing? Miss Shao's evil. She planned this all along, blah, 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 blah. So Scott Eastwood turns to Bern Gorman and says, okay, Newt is your friend. Charlie Day's character, he's your friend. You go to Shaw Industries, you figure out what the hell is going on. So Burn Gorman goes to Shaw Industries and he talks to Newt. And he's like, Newt, I don't know what your boss did, but we got to shut down the drones because they're killing people. And that's when they drop the big bombshell. That's when the movie goes, whoop, here we go. It turns out that our villain of the film is, in fact, Newt. Charlie Day has been planning this all along for 10 years. And again, it's a weird twist, man, but it makes sense considering, because in the last movie, he found a way to sync brains with a kaiju brain. And that was how he was able to figure out how to destroy the breach. And it ended up helping them in winning the war. But because he established that link, the creatures on the other side of the rift have been able to link back with him, and they've been in constant communication. Because remember, the kaiju are all hive mind, so essentially it's just one brain. Newt still has that brain, that original brain, in his apartment in a tank, and it's still functional. So we find out that for the last 10 years he's been talking back and forth with the kaiju because he's fascinated by them, but they've been taking advantage of him and pretty much possessing him. So I guess you could say that Charlie Day was filled up by the spirit of the Nightman, and he became the Nightman. If you get that joke, we're best friends now. I like that twist. I just don't like the way it was executed, just for one simple reason, and it's that when we first find out, when that revelation is first dropped on us, he has these little moments of flip-flopping. He has these little moments where he's like, I don't want to hurt people, but maybe I do, but maybe I don't, but maybe I do. He's got this sort of Jekyll Hyde thing happening. And that's cool because he was a hero in the first movie and he's still a good guy. So I thought, they were going to play with that. But after that scene, he runs away. We don't see him for about 20 minutes. And the next time we see him, he's just full on evil now. There's no more struggle. He's not, trying to fight back and get his brain back. He's just sort of like, I hate humanity and I'm working for the kaiju now. So here's some drones. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm kind of sad that there wasn't a struggle. I want Newt to fight it, and I think he gave up too easily. If it was going to be total domination by the kaiju of his mind, then they shouldn't have shown us that original scene where he's like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to listen to them, but I can't help it. They shouldn't have showed us that if they're not going to keep that up. And by the end of the movie, he's still alive, and he's tied to a chair. John Boyega comes up to him, and he's like raving. He's like, oh, we'll kill you. You think you stopped it? You didn't stop anything. We're going to kill everybody. Every last one of you humans is going to die. And John Boyega is like, no. We're bringing the fight to you this time, B. We're finding your dimension. We're going to kill you all. But, the movie ends where Newt is 100% the bad guy now. And there's no trace of the old Newt left over. And that kind of bummed me out. If the real Newt is gone forever, we didn't really get to say goodbye. We didn't even see him go. It all happened off screen, and that's kind of sad. I think that could have been handled better. However, that's a great way to bring back the kaiju. I love that. You take this thread of plot that happened in the first movie with him sinking brains and think, well, what would that do in the long run? This is exactly what it would do. And the drones being controlled by kaiju are able to open up rifts that the other actual kaiju come out of. And that's how you have your final fight with these monsters. And it all happens, like I said, in Tokyo, and it culminates on the slopes of Mount Fuji. It's just beautiful, man. It looks great. So it is every bit the wonderful, classic little sexy monster movie that you were hoping to see in bright, vivid daylight and full, glorious color, just with, the same amount of cheese, and you have to kind of take that with it. Take your lumps with the good stuff. I'm sad that Newt is fully evil now without a struggle, but I guess I'll take it. I am still on board with this franchise. And the creators have said, they have so many plans that if the movies do well enough, they have enough plans to do like spin-offs and lots of other crazy stuff. Like they have this universe mapped out, and I can't wait for that because I love the world building done in this. How many times do I have to say it? You know me. World building is my jam. I love it. And Pacific Rim does it very well. They don't give you a lot, but what they give you is meaty. There's a lot to it there. And most of it always happens in the beginning. I find that with both movies, in the first and the second. The majority of the world building takes place in the beginning, and then the other 3/4 of the film is just Jaeger on kaiju action. And I can't wait to see more, just expand that world more. what happens now? Are they going to go for the kaiju like they said, and how are they going to go about doing that? If you want to make a Pacific Rim 3, I will be on board. I'll buy my ticket right now. I'm a little sad about the title. Uprising is a very bland, very generic sequel title. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what rose up in this movie, with the exception of maybe the 3 kaiju coming out of the water. I still think that the original title, Pacific Rim Maelstrom, would have been so much cooler. I mean, there is a Maelstrom at one point, and it's not like Maelstrom has been used a jillion times in other sequel titles like Uprising has. I don't know what they were thinking. I hope they just call the next one Pacific Rim 3. I miss Roman numerals. I really do. That has been my review of Pacific Rim Uprising. It is a monster blasting, robot piloting, fun for the whole family slugfest. And if you're willing to take some of that cheese, you will have a good time at the movies, and that's what it's all about. So that has been Thumb Together. That has been Pacific Rim Uprising. I'm Andrew Fantasia, and you and I may not be drift compatible, but I will gladly neural handshake with you any day of the week. See you next time.